Brandy Melville. The brand every teenage girl wanted, but only a select few could truly fit into, literally and figuratively.
The reason why I liked it, I think it's just because everyone else liked it.
With pastel crop tops and oversized tees, it sold the ultimate cool girl aesthetic. Loved by influencers, flaunted by celebrities, it felt like the ultimate badge of girlhood. But here's the thing. Behind that picture-perfect image lies a story most of us never saw coming.
It was so funny to me that no one has any idea that this man, in his, maybe late 30s, is running the Instagram that all these teenage girls are fanning over.
We're talking about accusations of racism, fatphobia, and toxic beauty standards, leadership scandals that will make your skin crawl, and a business model that some call genius, but others call dangerous. It's a story of exclusivity, manipulation, and the cost of fitting in. This isn't just about fashion. It's about the identity Brandy Melville sold to millions, and the dark truths they tried to keep hidden. So what's really going on behind those pastel walls? It all starts with the image Brandy Melville so carefully crafted. It looked so desirable, it felt like every teenage girl's golden ticket to belonging. The brand began in Italy back in the late 1970s, inspired by a fictional love story between an American girl named Brandy and a British boy named Melville. For decades, it was just a small clothing line. But everything changed in the early 2000s when Stefan Marsan, the founder's son, took over. He didn't just run the brand, he reimagined it, transforming it into a powerhouse of teen culture. By the 2010s, Brandy Melville had mastered teen fashion. Minimalist baby tees, flowy skirts, and oversized sweaters that promised effortless cool. Celebrities like Kendall Jenner and Ariana Grande made the brand iconic, and on platforms like Instagram and Tumblr, the Brandy aesthetic became a uniform for the it girl generation. Suddenly, Brandy wasn't just a brand, it was a movement. Walking into one of their stores felt like entering an exclusive club. The muted tones, the soft lighting, the racks of carefully arranged basics. It all felt curated to perfection. And for many, buying Brandy was a badge of honor, proof you were part of the crowd. But there was a catch, and it was one you couldn't miss. One size fits most. It seemed harmless at first, maybe even practical. But for anyone who didn't fit into Brandy's tiny sizes, it became a harsh reminder that this brand wasn't made for everyone. It wasn't just a clothing policy. It was a statement. A line drawn in the sand about who was in and who wasn't. And the message didn't stop at the clothes. Brandy's ads and social media were a shrine to a very specific aesthetic. Thin, white, effortlessly pretty. The models looked perfectly unattainable, embodying an ideal that many girls could only dream of. And yet, millions were drawn to it. The rise of Brandy Melville wasn't just about selling clothes, it was about selling a lifestyle, a dream of what girlhood should look like. And for a while, that dream was irresistible.
I was 15 years old. I was immediately approached by one of the workers. Everything about it was just a dream come true,
But for all its effortless appeal, there was something about Brandy Melville that didn't sit right. It wasn't just the one-size-fits-most policy, though that was certainly a major part of it. For years, critics and customers alike started to notice a troubling pattern in how the brand operated and who it chose to cater to. Start with the stores. Step into a Brandy Melville location and you'd be greeted by a very specific vibe. Thin, white, effortlessly cool girls on posters, employees who looked like models, and racks of clothes that all seemed tailored to one singular body type. And it wasn't just a coincidence. According to former employees, this aesthetic wasn't just encouraged, it was required. If you didn't look like the Brandy girl, you probably weren't going to get hired. But even being hired wasn't the ultimate stamp of approval. Whistleblowers have revealed that employees were often subjected to what felt like a constant audition. Stories emerged of workers being judged on their appearance, not just by managers, but by top executives who seemed to keep a close eye on who fit the mold. The ones who didn't? They were quietly moved to the back room or let go entirely. For shoppers, the experience wasn't much better. The one-size-fits-most tagline may have sounded inclusive, but it only took one glance at the clothes to realize who most really meant. Dresses, skirts, and jeans so small they felt like they were made for preteens. Belts that barely wrapped around a waist. Many customers walked out of the store feeling less like they'd missed out on a great outfit, and more like they'd been told they didn't belong. It wasn't just the sizing either. Customers began noticing a striking lack of diversity in the models and imagery Brandy Melville used. Social media posts and in-store marketing were overwhelmingly filled with thin, white faces, creating an idealized version of girlhood that excluded so many. And as whispers of discrimination grew louder, so did questions about the brand's values. Was this exclusivity just a marketing strategy? Or was it something more ingrained? Yet, for all the unease surrounding the brand, its popularity only seemed to grow. Teens lined up for hours outside stores. Influencers continued to post their outfits. Brandy had somehow managed to make its exclusivity a selling point, feeding into the idea that if you could wear it, if you could fit in, you were part of something special. Still, there was an undercurrent of discomfort. Customers and employees alike were starting to wonder, was Brandy Melville just selling clothes, or was it selling a standard that no one should be expected to meet? And those doubts weren't unfounded, because what was happening behind the polished walls of Brandy Melville stores was far darker than anyone could have guessed. By now, Brandy Melville's carefully curated image was facing cracks that couldn't be ignored. But behind the scenes, the reality was even worse. At the center of the controversies was Stéphane Marsan, the brand's shadowy CEO, whose leadership style and internal practices painted a disturbing picture of the company. Reports began to surface of a toxic, cult-like work culture. Employees described being constantly judged on their appearance, not just by managers, but by executives like Marsan himself. Photos of workers, taken without consent, were reportedly sent directly to Marsan for approval, his way of deciding who was brandy enough to keep their jobs. Whistleblowers revealed stories of workers being let go simply for not fitting the brand's ideal image. If you weren't thin, white, and effortlessly beautiful, your time at Brandy was likely to be short-lived. And then there was the infamous red button. Allegedly installed at cash registers in Brandy stores, this button allowed executives to remotely alert employees to take photos of customers who fit the Brandy look. Those photos were then sent to Marsan for approval, with the most ideal customers sometimes being offered jobs on the spot. It wasn't about skill or experience. It was about fitting into the fantasy Brandy Melville was selling. But the allegations didn't stop there. Internal group chats among Brandy executives, leaked to the media, revealed a shocking culture of racism, fatphobia, and misogyny. Screenshots showed jokes and comments mocking customers and employees who didn't fit the Brandy aesthetic. One former employee even alleged that a profitable Toronto store was shut down simply because Marsan didn't want what he referred to as ghetto people of color shopping there. And it gets worse. Whispers of predatory behavior within the company have also emerged. Marsan himself has faced allegations of inappropriate conduct, with reports suggesting he maintained a disturbing collection of photos featuring young girls' bodies. Some of these allegations tied back to employees and customers who had been photographed as part of the company's hiring practices. The line between branding and exploitation blurred, and in some cases, it disappeared entirely. Brandy Melville's internal scandals didn't just stay within the company, though. They extended to its broader impact on consumers, especially young girls. The brand's exclusionary policies and toxic beauty standards were no longer just a marketing strategy. They were a reflection of the values upheld at its highest levels. And while the world began to uncover these truths, Brandy continued to operate, unapologetically selling the same image that had made it so famous. As if the internal scandals weren't troubling enough, the way Brandy Melville produced its clothes only added to the growing list of concerns. Brandy Melville has long marketed its pieces as Made in Italy, a label that evokes luxury, quality, and ethical craftsmanship. But behind the sleek branding lies a different reality.
They're made in Italy, they're made in Prato, però è uno scamotage, perché di italiano c'è solamente il posizionamento dell'azienda.
Investigations have revealed that many of the brand's garments are produced in sweatshops located in Prato, Italy, a city infamous for its use of illegal Chinese immigrant labor. Workers in these facilities often endure unsafe conditions, grueling hours, and meager wages, far removed from the glamour Brandy Melville projects to its customers. The quality of the clothing, despite the Made in Italy label, has also come under scrutiny. Critics argue that Brandy's fast fashion model prioritizes speed and trends over durability, with clothes that don't last more than a few washes. This creates a cycle of constant consumption, encouraging customers, primarily teenagers, to keep buying more. For a brand that touts timelessness, Brandy's business practices seem anything but sustainable. And the waste doesn't stop there. Brandy Melville's reliance on fast fashion has significant environmental consequences. The production of cheap fabrics paired with short-lived trends contributes to the growing problem of textile waste, much of which ends up in landfills. The brand's obsession with staying ahead of the trend curve comes at a cost, not just to workers, but to the planet itself. But perhaps what's most troubling is the disconnect between Brandy's image and its reality. To its millions of loyal customers, Brandy Melville represents simplicity, quality, and belonging. Yet behind every pastel crop top is a system that exploits vulnerable workers and perpetuates unsustainable practices, all while selling an unattainable ideal. For years, these issues have been overshadowed by Brandy's success. But as more people uncover the truth, one question remains. How did they keep getting away with it? The answer lies in the brand's ability to create not just a customer base, but a devoted following. Brandy Melville wasn't just selling clothes, it was selling a lifestyle. For teens, wearing Brandy wasn't about the fabric or the fit. It was about belonging. It was a badge of honor, proof that you fit the mold of the elusive Brandy girl, effortlessly stylish, perfectly trendy, and just exclusive enough to feel unattainable. And exclusivity was the key. The brand's one-size-fits-most policy sent a clear message. Brandy wasn't for everyone. But rather than turn people away, it had the opposite effect. It made the brand desirable, something to strive for. Teens wanted to prove they could fit in, literally and figuratively. It wasn't just clothing, it was a social status. But it didn't stop at sizing. Brandy mastered the art of scarcity, limited stock, constantly rotating collections, and a lack of online availability made every purchase feel like an achievement. If you didn't get it now, you might never have the chance again. This created a frenzy around the brand, with teens lining up outside stores and scouring social media for the latest drops. And speaking of social media, that's where Brandy really wielded its power. Unlike traditional brands, Brandy didn't rely on glossy magazine ads or celebrity endorsements. Instead, it used its customers. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok became flooded with Brandy Melville posts, each one showcasing influencers, celebrities, and everyday teens rocking the Brandy aesthetic. The brand didn't need to market itself. Its customers did it for them. And with every post, the image of the Brandy girl became more aspirational and unattainable. Behind the scenes, this obsession with image wasn't limited to customers. Employees were held to the same impossible standard. Former workers have described how their looks were scrutinized daily, with managers and executives evaluating their ability to represent the brand. Stories of shoppers being photographed and offered jobs on the spot only added to the exclusivity. To work for Brandy wasn't just a job, It was a validation of your place in their idealized world. But for every teen who felt validated by fitting the mold, there were countless others left feeling excluded, judged, or not good enough. Brandy Melville's cult-like culture didn't just sell clothes, it sold a standard of beauty and belonging that, for most, was impossible to achieve. The result? A loyal following that was willing to overlook the growing scandals, the exclusion, and the controversies, all for the chance to own a piece of the fantasy. Brandy Melville's polished image began to crack long before 2024. But this year, the truth became impossible to ignore. Whistleblower accounts and media exposés had been circling for years, but the release of HBO's Brandy Melville and To the Cult of Fast Fashion earlier this year brought the brand's controversies into sharp focus. The documentary didn't just highlight the toxic culture behind Brandy, it exposed internal messages, discriminatory practices, and the unsettling ways the brand maintained its exclusivity and power. From the infamous red button system to the troubling hiring and firing practices, the documentary peeled back the layers of secrecy surrounding the brand. It painted a picture of a company that thrived on exclusion, manipulation, and an impossible standard of beauty. For those who had followed Brandy's rise to fame, the revelations were both shocking and unsurprising. But what happens now? Despite these revelations, Brandy Melville's sales have only grown, with the increased attention drawing more curious shoppers to its stores. It's an unsettling reminder of how controversy can sometimes fuel, rather than hinder, a brand's success. For those wanting a closer look, the documentary offers the full story, diving deeper into the practices and scandals that shaped one of the most influential teen brands of the last decade. The question isn't whether Brandy's dark side exists, it's how long we'll keep ignoring it. What are your thoughts on this shocking story of Brandy Melville? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Till next time.